gentlemen, just this week, a teacher was brought on to being called out for sending her student outside. The student's family were saying, oh, my child was traumatized, etc., etc. The teacher now was called on and was given two choices. Either you apologize, either you stop as a teacher, give up your license, and another option. So the teacher chose the former. What does this mean, ladies and gentlemen? We believe that this is actually this is something that's going to be very problematic in the long run, in the sense that these kinds of shows like Tulfo, for example, or Face-to-Face, for example, actually lacks the very essence of due process that we have to uphold in a liberal democratic world, right? So let me go on to my standards. When do we regret something? When it poses direct harm, both in the long term and in the short term. We see that there are multiple harms present in the system, not only to individuals, but also to the criminal justice system and to the society in the long run because of the lack of accountability that's going to happen in a world where things like this are being propagated, especially in big-time media corporations, right? Second standard, when is something beneficial? Now, something is beneficial when these civilians whose cases are being disputed actually gets resolution at the end of the day. And we see that even if at the end of the day, Tulfo comes and says, oh, well, we finally found a resolution. At the end of the day, that doesn't matter because that's only for entertainment value and that's not going to hold water in courts. If PROs, for example, later pleas and civil or criminal cases are going to be filed anyway, well, let's just go ahead and go to an actual court that can actually put these people to jail without harming them, without specifically harming institutions, ladies and gentlemen. This is the stand of the government side. If this is the only way, this quick, justice delayed, this justice denied kind of justice is our way to call for justice, we believe that this only bastardizes the justice system and the institutions put in place to protect society at the end of the day. If we keep letting this idea of justice being controlled by arbitrary courts of justice of popular opinion that's dictated by trends and media corporations that uses it as merely entertainment value, we believe that's going to be harmful at the end of the day, and we do not want that in our world. Preemptions, ladies and gentlemen, we can tell us, well, you know what, there's a problem with the justice system, our justice system is rotten, things like that. We believe that even if that's the case, even if we claim, for example, that the justice system is rotten right now, we should then actually go and be proactive and fix it, right? So we can actually go and accommodate these people who currently have no access to it. Second, they can tell us that, you know what, this is entertainment value. But we believe, ladies and gentlemen, solely coming from OG, that curtailing entertainment systems is justifiable when it's harming people on the ground, in this case, the civilians, and also institutions and society in the long run. They can also tell us, ladies and gentlemen, that third, this is going to be about, this will actually lead to discourse. If you look at the trends now, people are talking about, criminal cases, blah, 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 blah. If you look at the quality of discourse now in that world, we believe that this is actually a bastardized form of discourse. Because what do you really see on TV? You just see people, throwing chairs at each other, mocking each other for the kind of cases that they're actually trying to resolve, right? Because what do we see on TV, right? These are usually people who we admit may not have the same access to courts as like people who have the money. But we believe that coming from our side, even if that's the case, there's a way for us to proactively let these people have the kind of justice that they deserve at the end of the day by sticking to established institutions, which I'm going to discuss more later. Yes.
How does regarding these particular media programs make people more proactive to change or fix the justice?
Number one, this is actually going to, lead to like institutions strengthening the programs that they have on the ground. Because people say, for example, if you're a lawyer and you see, if, for example, you're a government official and you see that, hey, you know what, why are people going to Tulfo all the time? Meaning there's a problem in the justice system. Meaning we have to fix the problem. Meaning there's a chance for us to fix this problem at the end of the day. This is the burden of the government side, ladies and gentlemen. They have to prove to us that with the existence of institutions and alternative that works, what then justifies these shows' existence, considering the alternatives on the ground are far less harmful. I'm going to discuss two things, ladies and gentlemen. First, I'm going to talk to you about harms, and second, the existence of alternatives on the ground. Comparatively, we're better off in a world where justice isn't served by one man or one show's whims, but rather through actual institutions. Let's look at the kind of harms that this is actually done to individuals, right? You have people who are being mocked online. You have people who are like being turned into memes because they speak funny or they speak English funny just for entertainment value. And we believe that in itself is already a direct harm. Second, let's talk about institutions, for example, and how if we just look at the kind of trends of social media, oh wow, Tulfo is now the highest court of justice right now. We believe that even if that's just a joke, it also shows a message that, you know what, justice is served better in shows like Tulfo at the end of the day. And we believe that's very harmful. That's why we have to stick with the institutions that we have right now and make it better at the end of the day so we can stop that, ladies and gentlemen. Third and last, we believe that in the long run, this is actually going to be very detrimental to society in the sense that society is going to view this as their main source of faster and deliberate justice. This will, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, only bastardize our view of due process that we have been fighting for since time immemorial, right? Because we deserve due process at the end of the day, and with that, we have to regret shows like this. Ladies and gentlemen, proceeding to my second argument, the existence of alternatives on the ground. Even if they say, ladies and gentlemen, you know what, the justice system is already rotten. Okay, fine, let's assume that that's true. Even if that's the case, we still have other institutions. Like if your boss is, for example, abusing you, you can report him to the HR, right? If your boss is abusing, if say, for example, you are a teacher and a child's parent is bullying you, you can always go to teachers' lobbying groups. That's why we have party lists with democratically elected representatives, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we're better off with these systems because they have actual lobbying power, which leads to pragmatic change. If you don't want your child being harmed in the long run, we believe that we're better off in a world where pragmatic change is actually going to be seen. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, OG is going to fly in this debate.
Here, here. Mr. Chair, realistically, in states with quick and judicious courts with minimal to no corruption, Tulfo would not exist. But courts are clogged, are expensive, and are corrupted in some cases. So just because you regret the show of Tulfo, for example, and assume that if he disappears overnight, these problems or these barriers to participation in justice are not removed. So we think even the minimums of justice are not met on their side. So we agree this is an extrajudicial process, but we think this satisfies the feelings of justice that these people seek, and that in itself is something that should be provided to them. So in the same sense that we allow the private sector to operate in pockets of state failure, we think the program serves what states cannot provide. For example, we allow, even though it's morally dubious, we think it's okay to resort to vigilantism in cases where the police fail, or we allow private schools to exist because we can't reach everyone with public schools only. Or even on their side, right, they even skirt the justice system or the courts on their side when they pursue private settlements because that's a failure of the courts to resolve these cases within their own boundaries. So you allow private parties to even resolve those things on their own ground, on their own terms. So what's the difference then? If they're still going to allow private settlements on their side, what's the difference with allowing the private settlement through a TV show? Clarifications on the motion. Two things. First, these are civil cases. So these are not crimes that undermine the humanity of various individuals. These are often cases in which someone feels that they were shamed and they feel that they deserve some compensation to some extent. Someone didn't pay their private debt to someone else. So we think the idea that the state has to always be involved in these cases is a completely absurd idea, because these are interactions between small parties on the ground. These are not murder cases, for example, and all those kinds of things. Sit down. Second thing is, how do these shows look like? Because they did not operationalize this. The first thing is, people file cases and decide to join, which means consent is present. So there's a consented choice for you to risk yourself being shamed on public television. We think this is no different in participating in like American Ninja or something like that and being shamed for not being able to complete the course, right? So we think the worst case on their side is a consented shaming on your part. Secondly, it's a platform of continuous questioning of evidence. So if they argue that you are a captive audience and you will always think that Tulfo is a god who always knows how to interpret evidence, this is not true. Because even if you are an audience, that doesn't automatically mean you don't question the evidence. Because the platform in which it is presented is, for example, Tulfo asks for various pictures, testimony, corroborating evidence from participants. So you are in a platform where you can disagree and are encouraged to do so. So this does not automatically mean you believe every single thing that Rafi Tulfo says. For example, in debate, even if the adjudicators are the audience of the debaters, because the platform is one in which evidence is continuously challenged, Mr. Speaker and members of the House, people don't automatically believe what the speaker in front is saying. We think this is the same case with Tulfo. But lastly, Tulfo does not sentence you to jail, nor does he create a binding enforceable obligation for the participants to comply with. So the worst case, again, is the shame that you consent to, but the best case on the opposition side is for people who could not access the courts. What they get is public knowledge that this individual wronged me, and this individual, for example, was settled his debts with me, and all those kinds of things. The access to those kinds of minimal pockets of justice that even the state cannot provide in their best case is something you get under our side. But model analysis, assuming but not conceding their goal, is their policy enough? Because they're just going to stick with the state, trying to fix its courts. This is not mutually exclusive anyway. Like the state can fix its courts simultaneous to Tulfo. In fact, we argue that there's even a higher pressure for the state to do so, because individuals will now question, why are we doing this through a private medium and not through the state courts, which are so far clogged, and maybe the state should try to create more courts that specialize in particular cases like small debts, as what happened in the Philippines. I'll take closing after first argument. First principle is in terms of the private interventions in state failure, and we think this is a parallel example to those kinds of things. So the idea is the public sector and the private sector work in concert to ensure that the people get the needs or wants that they have in order for them to live a good life, right? So what happens in status quo is you allow states to monopolize certain practices or certain industries when it's only the state who can properly execute those kinds of acts on a national scale. So for example, you only allow the state, you allow a state a monopoly of having an army because it's only the state that can enforceably create or exercise that right in a national scale, right? That's why you ban private armies, because the state can fulfill its duties of having its own public army that can be accessible to everyone. Or that's why you have free water, for example, well, it's not free, but heavily subsidized water in majority of cases because the state can provide that to everyone. In cases, however, in which the state fails, the state allows private corporations to act on their own and decide things for their own hands. Which is why, for example, you allow private corporations to sell you food because the state can't always provide you food. So in this case, the state can't always provide you the civil justice, which means state can always provide you civil justice, which means that principally speaking, what we're just doing is providing the people something that they could not access in the first place. So we think any act, even if the worst cases do happen, which is the public shaming, Mr. Speaker and members of the House, any act towards this direction, which is serving the underserved individuals who can't access any form of justice in the first place, is completely okay. Because at the best case, they settle their cases, their debts, for example, and all those kinds of things. Or on the worst case, for example, that even if Rafi Tulfo says that you have to pay someone this amount and you don't, at the very least, Mr. Speaker and members of the House, you can continue to forward this in the courts. Or if the individual doesn't agree to the shaming that he was subjected to, he can counter-file an official case in court and all those kinds of things. So we think, Mr. Speaker and members of the House, all of the harms are largely mitigable, but the best case that you only get under opening opposition is the justice that is often inaccessible to individuals because of barriers like court fees, for example, barriers like, you know, their inability to even go to the courts and all those kinds of things there.
Notice how LO's entire case line operates under things that Candace already told you aren't working. We already conceded to the fact that courts may or may not be able to accommodate. We already conceded to the fact that the justice system in the Philippines may or may not be, enough or sufficient to be able to solve the problems on the ground. But that doesn't mean that we've already conceded to the fact that Tulfo is going to be our banner or our monolith for justice. Because understand that, sure, just because we dissipate Tulfo overnight doesn't necessarily mean that the barriers the criminal justice system face go with him. But it means that we're able to prioritize fixing those problems instead of trying to look for loopholes and look for other parties to try and solve these problems for us. You yourself conceded that there's going to be follow-up cases in courts anyways. That's a concession, a deadly concession, that you yourself value these courts in the beginning. So why not just go straight ahead to these courts anyways? Why not just go straight ahead and file these cases if you really think that the value of due process is going to be present? Because like, for example, there's lobbying power with Tulfo or something. Understand that Tulfo, the show itself, concedes that it wants you to go to court. It wants you to push for these, these cases in the ground, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the main actor, that's pushing forward for these changes. Simply, they are taking advantage of the fact that they have so much clout, the fact that they have so much mainstream media attention, that they're able to provide justice for these individuals. We don't think that's true. We don't think that's ever going to operate properly, because you yourself bastardize the justice system when you try and go through these, when you try to go through justice through these scrupulous means. Firstly, in terms of trying to arbitrate this debate, we have to talk about the harms of, and benefits. Let's make a comparative analysis of what their world looks like, right? In a world where Tulfo exists, Tulfo propagates, and Tulfo is Tulfo and Mang Amy and Dr. Phil, for example, are ways for people, people see and people hold certain, people think that this is a way for them to get justice. Sure, if they feel that they get justice from this, that doesn't necessarily mean that they do, right? Just because, for example, I feel justice because I killed the murderer of my child. That doesn't mean that it's valid. It doesn't necessarily, justify that I killed the person that killed my child. It's the same level of argumentation. At least under government's model, we want to prioritize the fixing of already existing alternatives and status quo, because we think not only are they far more fair, they're far less harmful. Because you yourself conceded that the harms exist under your rules. You consent to embarrassing yourself. Firstly, no rational individual is going to consent to embarrassing themselves, right? Maybe they do it for attention, or maybe they do it because there's monetary incentives, but they're not going to go and make an ass of themselves because they want to. I don't think that's the rational thinking, I don't think that's the rational mental calculus of a rational person, right? So let's go with my extensions. Firstly, in terms of is the arbitration legitimate? Understand that, sure, there's entertainment that happens. Sure, discourse becomes more prevalent because, there's more things that talk about on Twitter. Tulfo is trending, and people are far more able to talk about court cases. But at the same time, you no longer, this isn't found exclusively in these shows, right? Understand that some court cases can be done quickly. We're not telling you that it's always going to be the case, but some court cases are, processed that much further. And if you're going to think that, it's inaccessible and people of the poor, the poor demographic can't afford it, understand that there's PAL, for example, and sure, maybe you're going to tell me, the lawyers from PAL aren't as skilled and they'll never have a chance at winning court cases. Understand that becomes incredibly dismissive to the fact that these attorneys and alternatives exist, and therefore this is something that the poorer individuals can take and can use for them on the ground. Second, it's okay, sure,
Are private settlements evil?
No, like we're not talking about them being exclusively evil. No, but we're telling you that if there are if alternatives that aren't involving private settlements exist, why not take them? Why go to Tulfo if you're going to court regardless, right? Because you yourself conceded that you can follow court cases in the judiciary. That means that you yourself has a deadly concession that you value justice, like you value legitimate due process under your side. Third extension on whether or not it's valid. Right? Because this is something that Candice was able to touch on the validity of justice you get from these shows. Sure, you get to call out individuals on the ground. Sure, you get to have people that go into these shows and are embarrassed or are made fun of, but understand that the justice you get is only from a court of public opinion. You don't get any justice resolved on the ground. You don't get any justice even. Like, for example, yeah, okay, you're able to lobby for courts to actually give premium to these, like, to actually give, give attention to these court cases on the ground. But understand that that doesn't solve the issue, right? It only ever exacerbates it even because not only are you going to take this, like you're going to take advantage of the people on the ground that you're putting on these shows where they embarrass themselves and they don't even get anything for it. Like, sure, they might get money and they might get their 15 minutes of fame, but no, Tulfo's not gonna help them pay for their court cases. Tulfo's not gonna give them like private settlements. Tulfo isn't going to give them any of the marginal benefits you say he is because it's not in his, like, it's not to his advantage. And understand that this also moves on to my fourth extension really, really quick. In terms of how mainstream media is able to then use this to try and be predatory to people on the ground. Understand that Tulfo, because of the trend that Tulfo sets, there's going to be precedent for it. Like, people are going to pay attention more towards the kind of discourse that he has. And we think it's harmful because people will then forget the alternatives that they should take in the first place. And we don't want that under opening government. The things I want you to remember from their speech is the following. Number one, justice is never going to exist in a world where you're going to think, like, justice is never going to exist in a world where you take in a world where you don't try and push for due process. Secondly, even if you think that this level of justice, at least you feel some sort of pride for yourself because you were able to embarrass another person. I don't think this is the kind of narrative we want to propagate in status quo. And thirdly, if you want better justice, you yourself concede the value of courts is there and you want to fix the problems of the criminal justice system. Understand that you can never fix the problems of the criminal justice system when you're giving it an active competitor in trying to arbitrate these cases in the first place. You're only ever going to let people go more into these shows, like go more in depth towards Tulfo, rather than go to courts in the first place. Candice and I were very clear coming from opening government that we don't want this shit to exist because we think that it's not necessary for people to try and embarrass themselves. And this is a harm that this is a harm that's necessarily going to be irreversible because the fact that you're in the internet for years and years to come is only ever going to harm you in the long run anyways. For all those reasons, opening government takes this debate. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if we summarize what opening government is trying to give us, they're basically telling us that we don't need Tulfo or we should regret Tulfo because there are brilliant alternatives on the ground that, people have the option to access. Now, Mr. Chair, the main reason why that defense or that line of argumentation is not enough is because they were not able to properly justify to us why, if Tulfo is conceded to be something that also works, why is Tulfo then not a valid alternative? Especially when they did not even specify or justify or mechanize to us how their alternatives are at the end of the day better than Tulfo. They did not even prove the accessibility, affordability of those examples. If I'm not mistaken, they did not even specify an actual specific example, Mr. Chair. At the end of the day, they were not able to disprove, so that why then should they tell us that, if that's their main argument, they're going to lose this debate. Now, Mr. Chair, before I continue, let me first, again, specify certain clarifications that we need to point out, right? First, Tulfo is not the enacting punisher. He's not doing the punishment, Mr. Chair, meaning he's not always better. We concede that in cases where the courts can help the people, meaning they're accessible to the people, then, of course, the courts hold hegemony over Tulfo. But that's not the case why we're choosing not to regret Tulfo, Mr. Chair. The fact that we're choosing not to regret Tulfo is because the scenario exists where people cannot always access the courts and even those alternatives that they're pointing out. That is where we see that Tulfo is trying to help the people at the end of the day. Why was Sean very important in this debate, Mr. Chair? He told you, firstly, that principally that these media programs allow, the micro justices that are in these media programs allow is justified because the state cannot do it alone. Sit down later. Sean also explained to you to an extent about, how it's justified principally, especially in a state that cannot handle all the cases at once because of shortage or congestion. But less than that, let's respond to opening government, right? First response to opening government, they told us that these media programs lack due process. Mr. Chair, clarification, Tulfo does not enact the punishment. But later on, let's characterize even the nuances of cases in these media programs, right? These are going to be deaths, these are going to be shaming, these are going to be petty rivalries. However, it also caters to maybe missing family members or maybe calling for donations for people that need it. At the end of the day, Mr. Chair, these are not always cases that necessitate court justices. Especially, it's an advantage because Tulfo, being not the one that's actually enacting the punishment, he's just the person that's going to be the bridge for these people to access those higher forms of authorities because these people do not have the capital, the resources, or maybe even the basic proximity to access those, resources, right? Sit down. They also told us, now this is their main argument, their alternatives. They told us that there are alternatives on the ground and that these programs serve justice better, right? Mr. Chair, let's question then the accessibility and affordability to these alternatives, especially when it's them that's also conceding to the problem that the judicial process is not able to cater to all of the marginalized. Since the alternatives are inaccessible, Mr. Chair, what then are the people left with? Let's paint a world where, people continue to face these micro injustices without an avenue like Tulfo or these media programs. Where then do they go? The chances are, because they're still trying to wait on solving the problems of, the congested justice courts, problems are what's going to be happen. These people, when we characterize them, these are people that are coming from, impoverished areas or people from the local sectors, right? What's going to happen? Likely, they're going to take matters into their own hands. This is going to be a harm, Mr. Chair, because what happens when people take it in their own hands? Violence happens, vigilantism happens, maybe even crimes of passion happen because they were not allowed to be given an avenue to, express themselves or maybe try to appeal. But Mr. Chair, if that is then the case, why people need an avenue, I will now prove to you why then is media sensationalization or why are these programs the better form or an effective method. But before I go that, yes, Nico.
It's not a burden to fix the justice system. Here, it is corrupt. No clear connection to why public shaming is the answer.
Mr. Chair, I've already told you that not all those cases even achieve justice through public shaming. Remember how I told you how Rafi Tulfo can also handle cases where there is a higher authority of justice required. However, he is not the one that enacts the punishment. Yes, to an extent, he reads, the articles or the RA1 something to the people only to inform them. But at the end of the day, he's just a middleman so that these people can have access to higher authority. He has certain connections and influences he can call so that these people can be helped. Now, why is it still important that is in the form of media sensationalization? Which is my constructive. Sit down. Mr. Chair, let's characterize the people that actually resort to Rafi Tulfo, right? These are people coming from impoverished and marginalized sectors. People in far-flung areas that maybe not have the capital for lawyers. They are not... And also, we can also paint, Mr. Chair, due to them being impoverished, they're also unaware or uneducated on the legal rights that they have. And maybe because of this ignorance, to an extent, they're also not interested in, trying to know about their rights. And they are not... Because of this, Mr. Chair, we paint this characterization. Why then is a media show that sensationalizes legal conflicts and maybe is entertaining an effective way for these people to have better access to those higher courts through Tulfo? Because, Mr. Chair, the fact that it has to be a media sensationalization because we paint that nuance that they are not interested in knowing their legal rights. But something as simple as an entertaining and yet also legally educating, media program, it allows them to, understand better how they can. It informs them that, hey, I have these legal rights, but I'm not always aware of them. Why is it important? Because that show is not those boring documentaries about the laws. There are not news articles which people are not incentivized from this certain context. They are not incentivized to listen to those, legalistic articulations. What Tulfo does is he simplifies it through the use of case studies which people on the ground can easily relate to. The very usage of entertainment and emotional, redemption from those simple narratives from people that they can relate to because these are simple people who are not intimidated to talk because they're not facing legal courts. It allows them to sympathize better. And when you let these people, these uninterested people, sympathize better, you solve the issue then of people not trusting the government system. Now, why is it important? Because if they're going to tell us that, the people can trust the government, they can use the government. Let's say, magically, we can solve the issue of congestion in the government system. But without Rafi Tulfo creating the trust in the government system through these people, what are the chances even of those people accessing, once the courts are freed up, right? Because at the end of the day, they were never informed that the courts are available or that they can actually voice out about their micro problems. Mr. Chair, model analysis. Let me just give it to you clearly. In their model, there are alternatives that work, but they did not actually specify how those alternatives are affordable. And even if they do become affordable in time, they did not prove the incentive of these people who are educated about those, about those alternatives to actually engage into them. But coming exclusively from opening opposition, we already proved to you the power of media sensationalization and how Tulfo is not the judge, but he's the middleman that educates and leads the people to the justice that they need in time. Opposition is proud to oppose.
You're here. Poor public school teachers, poor bus drivers, poor carpenters. Majority of the people who involve themselves to these shows are the poorest and the marginalized. The problem right now is the media is taking advantage of the emotional cases of these driven shows because they want to make these shows appealing, and it drives the views of YouTube views of Tulfo online, and it targets the poorest, the desperate, and the emotional. We believe that closing government will strategically enter this debate because there was a missing link in the opening houses. What was the missing link? One, there was no nuance to what is really the role of media and how do they operate. What are the motivations on how they create these shows and how do they make it appealing? Yes, we concede that it's not the role of for them to create justice. That is why we'll prove to that. Second, there was no discussion on how this targets the poorest and the marginalized, and how media takes advantage of their plight and their situation. But before that, let me give two levels of responses to the discussion of opening opposition. Two discussion in terms of the failure of state responsibility. How is this an answer to the failure
failure of state responsibility. And second, to the discussion of Ian that they want to create a sense of awareness in the local grassroots. First, failure of state responsibility. We believe that the failure of the state responsibility, yes, to some extent, the justice system of the Philippines has not been perfect. But we believe that certain alternatives are still working, and we see that the poorest of the people are still accessing it. Talk about the public attorney's office, and talks about how barangay halls can be conduits on how people can tackle small civil cases. If they want more clear discussions and people who have training in arbitration, people of the poorest can go to their barangay halls, can go to their barangay captains, especially to settle these disputes. We believe that it's not a total failure of state responsibility. But in the best case, that yes, there is a failure of state responsibility, we believe that these shows can only benefit few cases. Let's talk about how many cases Tulfo can gather in a year on how Ami Perez can gather people in his face-to-face. We believe that it only benefits a few in a number of people compared to barangay halls, which are more accessible to the people on the ground. Second, awareness of rights. We concede that there is a need for awareness of rights, but we challenge their kind of model is providing the shows the best way to provide awareness. We believe that there are other better alternatives. We can talk about education, public schools where people are oriented about their rights. We can talk about campaign drives led by justice groups or led by their barangay hall to make people know about their rights. To worst case, maybe to some extent, this does not reach the people, but at least this is a better platform, this is a more oriented platform compared to their highly emotional kind of shows. Where will CG enter this debate? We will have a clear tie back to the motion of what is really the responsibility of the media and how do they operate. What are the motivations? What are their capitalist drives that make their shows very appealing? And second, how is this necessarily bad to the marginalized people which this media clearly target? First and foremost, we believe this is an overstep of media's responsibility. Media's role is to provide information, reporting of movements, issues like climate change. But in order to continue their business, they want their shows make appealing. Talk about how Tulfo is the #1 rated show. Talk about how Face to Face was the best noontime show in the past. Why? Because these same shows are driven by companies. Their priority is profit, not quality of justice. Their priority is to continue their business, to continue their YouTube show, not to really solve this problem. To some extent, yes, they might give a verdict, but we question the kind of quality of the verdict that they have. Second analysis, we also believe that it is immoral for media to take advantage of the plight of the issues of these people. We believe that they are the means that they are using this and the goal of the intended means that they are using this is very immoral because the goal is for them to gain profit and more YouTube views. But before I continue, Sean.
Private corporations profit when they sell you food and extract your labor, so they profit, but the poor also profit from having their needs met. So the profit of media corporations does not negate the micro injustices that these individuals are not able to access.
Thank you, Sean. I'll answer that question in my quality of justice. But what about the quality of justice? We believe that yes, verdicts are given, but we believe that the quality of justice is questionable. This was the missing analysis coming from opening government. One, it does not provide an equal playing field. We always see that face-to-face and Tulfo always brands already these criminals as already guilty. We see how biased they are to the victims because the victims' plight are very appealable, very relatable to the victims on the ground. That's why most of the viewers of these shows are from Class D, Class C, Class E because their stories are relatable and they gain high views. Second, we believe that this is just selective justice. To some extent, yes, they provide justice. They can cover 2 to 3 cases, bus drivers fighting with passengers. But we believe that the kind of justice that they give is very selective at most minimal. We believe it's still better on our side in status quo where we have the set alternatives like the barangay captain or the PAW, which is better. And we believe that thirdly, we believe that the benefits that they have given is outweighed by ours. But what the second discussion? How this takes advantage of the poorest and the marginalized. Look how OG discussed this debate. They just talked about how it benefits general. But we believe that more than the benefits and the harms, it specifically targets a certain population. And that population and audience are the poorest of the poor. Most of the clients of Tulfo are the poor because their clients are relatable. OGO believe that they are consent and harms. But we believe that these consent are not necessarily given in their own volition. Because these people are desperate. These people are highly emotional. We believe that when emotions cloud your decision making, we believe that these are the drivers why you resort to these kinds of shows. We believe that maybe to some extent, like they concede that, but most of these cases, what is the problem to this? First, it creates a false sense of justice to the poor. That the poor will look at these kinds of shows that it's the only way of justice. And second, the worst case scenario for these people that are targeted is that the scrutiny that they will have, which is an exclusive, is lifetime. When these videos are posted in YouTube, this will be lifetime kind of scrutiny, whether you're guilty or you're innocent. What have we proven in this debate? What CG has proven in this debate was that opening discussions were lacking in the role and how they operate. It was only CG who was able to tie back to the role of the media and who these shows are able to target in the most marginalized population of the Philippines. And we believe we open the case for CG.
Speaker spoke for 7 minutes and 30 seconds.
Mr. Chair, there's been a misunderstanding in this debate that the only form of justice that people acknowledge and is valid at the end of the day is one that is dispensed by the courts. However, we tell you coming from closing opposition that justice is something that's dependent on the individual, and sometimes even if it isn't given by public authorities, even if it isn't given by barangay officials, for example, or the Supreme Court, we tell you that justice through the approval and the validation of you being in the right is something that we should consider as valid at the end of the day. We tell you, Mr. Chair, a few clarifications coming from the very heated and emotional debates coming from the previous houses. Let's clarify once again, Mr. Chair, why this rise is happening in the first place. First of all, there's a lack of trust in the justice systems that exist due to corruption that is predominant, Mr. Chair, and also, secondly, going to court is a long and expensive process that most people cannot afford, especially for the problems aired out by the people in these shows. Talk about, Mr. Chair, do you really think that someone can simply go to the Hall of Justice and report a neighbor, for example, Mr. Chair, that was sleeping with their husband, for example? We tell you that the alternatives coming from government side, we tell you that there are public attorneys that exist in LGUs. We tell you that public attorneys, a lot of people are clamoring for public attorneys because these are the only things the poor, the marginalized, car access at the end of the day, and these are swamped with people as well. We tell you that the alternatives that they pose are not enough at the end of the day, and even if they propose alternatives that does still not disprove the validity and the authenticity of the justice that these media programs can provide for the people who air them out in these shows. Because we tell you once again, the participants in these shows are citizens usually coming from the lower class to middle class people. However, how are the conflicts on these shows resolved? It hears every person's side of the story. At the end of the day, there is still a form of confrontation. And the resolution to this can be public shaming, in Tulfo's case, but sometimes it also leads and compromise in resolution through counseling, like in face-to-face, for example. It's wrong for the houses to claim that the only resolution we get from these media programs is through fighting and punching one another, Mr. Chair. Sometimes there is counseling, sometimes there is dialogue and compromise and understanding at the end of the day, which is why it's bad coming from government side to demonize these programs. Rather than telling you the proper action is debate for me, let's assess this debate and this perspective from the perspective of the average reasonable person, Mr. Chair, who cannot enter the courts and then sit down. How do we provide justice for people who are incapable of affording our criminal courts? Because government side has constantly been throwing to you, especially opening government, has constantly been giving alternatives, Mr. Chair, has constantly told you that you should improve the court system instead, improve the court systems that are currently existing instead, and focus on that rather than on these shows, Mr. Chair. But we tell you that even if we improve the court systems, even if it exists in a perfect world, that does not mean that people can exactly go to these courts, can afford these courts, especially due to the long and protected process that exists, Mr. Chair. Now let's respond to the arguments coming from closing government. Because they gave you two arguments. Firstly, on the overstep of media's responsibilities in these cases, and secondly, on the idea that the consent they are giving is not absolute and it provides a false sense of justice at the end of the day. Firstly, response to the idea of an overlap of media responsibilities. They told you that the role of media at the end of the day is to spread news, and getting profit and exploiting these people is wrong at the end of the day, Mr. Chair. However, we tell you, so what, Mr. Chair? What does this prove? At the end of the day, media is a profit-driven business. Media is a profit-driven business. It does aim to sensationalize. We are not discrediting that. However, the argument coming from closing opposition, which opening opposition did not really flesh out, is how this sensationalization helps the average reasonable person actually find justice, even if they're marginalized, because they did not mechanize it properly. Someone will mechanize it for them. We tell you that it's justified because regular media programs, like news programs, for example, already sensationalize news to bring attention to specific problems, Mr. Chair. And the problems expressed by the people in the shows like Tulfo and Face to Face are not necessarily felt by everyone, but are real and apparent to their target demographics. We tell you that this is a problem because these people are in the marginalized sectors of society, Mr. Chair, and their issues are not often the ones we see on television. It allows people to accept, especially outside these demographics and communities, to examine and understand the side of societal conflict that our courts are not always equipped to deal with or who have higher priorities to deal with. Because we tell you, Mr. Chair, that if you're a regional court, for example, and that you have many cases to deal with, especially other criminal or civil cases that have large value in society, Mr. Chair, we tell you that the problems between neighbors, for example, will always be at the bottom of the list, Mr. Chair, even in a perfect society. We tell you that, sit down please, we tell you that these programs answer the specific need for justice that is required by a niche in society that our courts are not necessarily equipped to deal with. And even if we have the perfect courts, why is this necessary at the end of the day? We tell you, Mr. Chair, that opening exchange has focused on whether or not these programs are valid in a legalistic sense and whether or not provides legal retribution reparation. CO will enter this debate by telling you that the court of public opinion is as valid as a legal one for the people, and popular justice is a valid form of justice for these individuals. Before I go closing.
We have no problem if it comes quarterly reports, but engage with our extension that it affects the kind of quality of justice and how it takes advantage of the poorest of the poor.
We tell you that even if it takes advantage of the poorest of the poor, Mr. Chair, even if it does use these people's emotions, for example, in order to gain ratings, we tell you that even if it is used as a form of entertainment, why should that be a bad thing? At the end of the day, these are profit-driven businesses, these are profit-driven models, and at the end of the day, the reparation that they provide is still equivalent to the exploitation that they do. Because why would we tell you that the public court of opinion is a legitimate one? We tell you that not everyone finds a sense of justice only through legal means, Mr. Chair. People do not only find assurance that they're being heard through the courts, for example. We tell you that being assured by Tulfo or the Trio Tagapayo in face-to-face that you are in the right, Mr. Chair, is enough for these individuals. They are not asking necessarily for courts to rule that they are in the right always according to the Constitution, or they're not asking for reparations, Mr. Chair, of several thousands of pesos. Sometimes these people only need to be told that yes, what their neighbor did was wrong by telling other people or spreading rumors that she was cheating on her husband, for example. And do you really think realistically that the courts will actually spend their time doling out decisions on these cases when they have more pressing situations to deal with, more pressing cases to deal with. We tell you, Mr. Chair, that public opinion and popular justice is a valid form of justice for these people, for the average reasonable person. And when we take away that form of justice that these people, that some of these people are the only form of justice that some of these people can afford or can access at the end of the day, even if there's a long waiting list, as long as it's free and there's a chance that they can enter it, we tell you it's ethical and unethical under government model, and it's principally unjustifiable. Proud to oppose. Thank you. Here.
Speakers spoke for 7 minutes and 22 seconds.
Here, here. To close the debate for government side this quarterfinal round.
Up until this point, the opposition's point is simple. That they have proven that we need to do something because there is a flawed justice system. And second, there is no answer, even if it is immoral, why is it still okay? They never really responded to the argument where we told you that it's taking advantage of the poor and why this immorality is something that we should regret. No engagement even until closing opposition. Second, we tell you that even if there is benefit, it still does not answer why public shaming is justified, especially when it is sucking money out of the misfortunes of the poor. No engagement from all of opposition. But first, let's respond to other cases that they launched. First, Sean told us that if we're so concerned about this arbiter or civilian arbiter, why are we okay with private agreements and why it's still okay with us? We tell you that this parallelism is absurd because the clear difference is that there is no public verdict happening on that paradigm. It's clearly a closed door discussion, meaning public shaming does not exist, and this is an inherent harm that you get that we are presenting and they never really responded to. Second, we tell you, and coming from my POI that they never really answered, it's not even our burden to fix the justice system, but we're still engaging on their best case that it's corrupt in its clout. We tell you that it's still no connection on why, even if the system is corrupt, it's still not answering to the question why this is the right method that we will follow. Because the only thing that they argued is that we need to do something about it, but never really answered the question why this is the best way, especially when we mention the immorality of the policy that they want to pursue. Second, they tell us about consented harm and why it's still okay. And CO never really responded even when we engaged with this. We tell you that the demographic of the people that they say that are consented are the poor that are desperate and easily swayed. Meaning they are not fully aware of the extent of harm that they will get from shaming. This affects the future of the people. They never really engage to job opportunities, or even if they win, even if they're the victims here, that they won the trial, it's still going to be harmful on their side because there will be tagged as someone that is palengkera or all other shaming that the public will scrutinize them. In fact, even if you win or lose in this public shaming trial that they want to prosper, you're never gonna win because you're ultimately just a puppet of the capitalist government, a capitalist companies that manipulates them. This is where we were clear in our extension, and I will highlight my the best speaker here. First, we argued how they argued about vigilantism and tell us that it's more likely going to happen on our side. First level, that's not true. Because just because Tulfo did not exist before, it automatically happens. Just because Tulfo is there, automatically, vigilantism will automatically be gone. Second, even more likely on their side, vigilantism will more likely happen because now they have a justification of having the justice on their hands because they can't trust the system is corrupt, so it's okay for us to get the justice by ourselves. This is a clear manifestation from the whole position. Second, but let's clinch this because even if they are going to get an extent of benefit, the best case, the method is still not justified. Even if it means taking advantage of the people because they never really engage with that. What have we proven in this debate? We told you on the first issue, what is the priority of the media and its role in the whole grand scheme of things. We tell you, and what does it lead then if it's the priority of the media? Number one, the priority of media is to get a lot of audience, influence, because it is the way to earn through a lot. Get more money, get more funds, and this is to the expense of the people that is vulnerable there. Already told you, consent is vitiated. And second, even if it's not, these are clear harm to the people. Because even if there's a verdict, it still not answers the question of the harms that they're going to get after the verdict. Talk about the public shaming. If their priority is money and earning, what are the cases that they accept? This was also not responded. We tell you, cases that are too extreme and out of this world by the poor to get sympathy from the viewers. This alone shows how even in their best case that there's a benefit for their verdict, the benefit is minimal at best because it's only on selected cases that can pander to the emotions of the people. Meaning that even on their best case, it's number one, taking advantage of the poor and at the same time does not have clear big benefit that will really outweigh the harms that we presented. But yes.
Respond to Dialog's argument where he said that entertainment value demystifies the foreign language of legality. So when Tulfo cites articles under civil law, doesn't that increase awareness, which is also your goal, and shouldn't that be in concert with other information rights that you still forward?
This was already responded by Sir. We told you that even if education can be education can happen on their side, it's not mutually exclusive because we can do that on our side. We can even create new shows that will be creative or you catch the attention of viewers. The point is, it's not mutually exclusive. As long as we don't public shame people, then we're okay. It's not arbitrary, it's not entering to an extent of responsibility. Going back to our extension, we told you, we told you that in second, even if justice is served by satisfying the viewers, it's still immoral because they earn at the expense of the vulnerable. What's the clincher to this? Because number one, this responds to the Clog Supreme Court and at least they have able to settle to a certain extent. Number one, the quality of the verdict is questionable. We told you that their priority is already getting money. They need to act swiftly and they need to get verdict quickly. This means that the type of quality verdict is not really assured and it's questionable. Second, even if it is right, the benefit is already minute and scope is limited. What then is the response of closing opposition from all of our cases? Number one, they were okay with immorality. Notice how dismissive they are to the clear harms of consented people that they argued. The show already earned off them, plus they are still burdened by a lifetime of harm caused by public shaming. No analysis from closing opposition. They only responded that we're okay with that because at least we get a verdict. Similar to OO's case and very reminiscent. What's the conclusion then and what have we proven? Number one, we engage that all their benefit is still present, yes, but minimal at best. The quality of justice is highly unresponded. And number two, even if there is an extent of benefit, no answer to the immorality of taking advantage of the poor, and with all those reasons we are proud to propose.
Speaker spoke for 7 minutes and 7 seconds.
I need to thank the previous speaker for their speech to finally conclude this quarterfinal round like here.
We think in opening debate there was a deadlock because both houses argued that, you know what, these programs are good or that these programs can be bad. Because according to OO, these programs can bridge or sensationalize particular issues and then they kind of explain on how these particular sensationalization will automatically mean that the criminal justice system will improve. But under OG, they told you that, you know what, it bastardizes the criminal justice system without even mechanizing as to how this bastardization happens at the end of the day. This deadlock is
should be penalized even more because though they promise the improvement of criminal justice system, the mechanization that is lacking, that has been provided by the opposing government, means that the political will argument that they were trying to forward is not going to fly under their models. So there were a lot of goals launched in this particular debate. OG told you that they're going to improve the justice system, no policy. OO told you that yes, they are also going to improve the justice system through TULFO, the middleman, as they call it. The CG told you that it's about the quality of the justice system, but on CO, we were more hard-line. We told you that it's the importance of the individual perception of justice that matters, and that is quality enough for the people involved. We think that there's selective world building coming from opening, because her TULFO example, omits the value-adding discussion on the Magna Carta of teachers, for example, or of the value of entertainment and personal justice, and how schools are reminding teachers and students of their rights. What does this mean? This means that the strengthening of institutions are not mutually exclusive on their side and can also be fulfilled coming from opposition. This is where Gio's discussion was the most important. But we're not over-promising that national change is going to be automatic, but rather we're telling you that when stakeholders on the ground discuss these particular issues in their respective spaces, these discussions are value-adding in and of itself because of the degree of impact to the concern that happens and to the reach of people when it does become sensationalized. What was Sir Akim's greatest contribution in this debate? He told you that, you know what, there are alternatives, for example, that the LGU can respond to these particular issues. They do not have to resort to TULFO, the middleman. But it's most likely that these LGUs also take up a lot of issues in the community as well. Thus, capitalizing on the media attention that you get once you sensationalize a particular issue is more likely for this issue to be addressed. Meaning that when you set a precedent, it's only possible when this precedent is going to follow up on the cases and the justice that's going to be actualized coming from Sir Akim's side. So, Gio's contribution in this debate was telling you that, you know what, the profit-driven nature of these particular shows is not inherently bad. Because when you look at MMA, for example, or Wawawi, for example, or Jessica Soho, they also tease their next episodes by showing violence or drama, for example, or crying people, for example. These are still stories of people on the ground, and the same kind of exploitation happens because these people still benefit from these, because the media company still benefits from these particular stories. Consenting to these shows means that you are acknowledging as well that you are submitting yourself to the court of public opinion, and we think that consent is valid at the end of the day. But lastly, the profit is not limited to the plight of the poor as well. We think that because they garner the individual justice that they were looking for through the public opinion, we think that that's still valid at the end of the day. There are two issues in this debate. No. First, is conventional justice automatically the quality justice, and which justice is more valuable to the most vulnerable actor, which are the individuals that was only characterized in closing debate when we told you that these are the individuals who subscribe to these shows, most likely poor and minimum wage earning individuals. First level, no. On the best case, Sir Akim's case succeeds and you win in court, and this doesn't take away the fact that you, for example, the injured party and a member of the minimum wage earners loses time and resources in following through this due process that's going to be very expensive at the end of the day. At least a TULFO appearance is a one-time thing, and it's even more informational because though he does mistranslate a couple, though he does misinterpret the Constitution a lot, because there is public dissent coming from these constitutions, there is more public engagement onto correcting these particular misrepresentations at the end of the day. And he also has researchers that can reference the law. That's the best case if the case is actually taken by TULFO. But the second issue that we'll discuss is on answering on the worst case that was pointed out by Nico in this debate, but sure, opening.
Okay, so assuming that personal justice is valid, you still don't get pragmatic benefits like, payout, you still don't get court cases, you still don't get due process. Deal on your worst case where these courts are accessible and these courts are effective.
The worst case of our side shouldn't be to prove on the model of government that, these courts are in fact effective. The fact that you failed in your world building is not going to be our burden in this debate. What's the worst case of government? What was the worst case that we're willing to take on in this debate? Nico told you and emphasized that, public shaming is going to happen and sensationalization is going to happen. But on first level, public shaming can lead to change for the stakeholders individually. These media programs give them the license to air out their grievances, but the verdict doesn't end there. Just because fine doesn't mean that when they go out, these particular concessions are not able to be achieved by these individuals alone, even without this middleman Tulfo at the end of the day. But secondly, the media program's verdict is not as permanent as a court verdict, which is likely to happen if you lose in court cases, for example, meaning that people will forget over time. It is a difficult process, but the trade-off is that the participants do not have to bear this lasting effect on their actual papers rather than just the opinion of other people. On opposition, on government side, what is the worst case? They're going to isolate individuals, poor people on the ground who think that this is the only form of justice that they are able to access, and this is the only form of justice wherein they feel comfortable because they're not intimidated by the legalese that happens in court. These individuals who seek validation from public opinion is important in our society, and it is an unfair penalty as well on the media industry that doesn't differ that much from the exploitation that happens through MMK or Jessica Soho. We think that the isolation of these individuals on the ground, despite the alternatives that Sir Akim has presented, is still going to happen because there are so many issues in the world. We think that because there are so many issues, the moment that an opportunity for media traction exists, we think that you should capitalize on that issue and make sure that you milk that issue for what it's worth in order to get the pragmatic benefits that you want at the end of the day. Thanks.